Command, we have a critical problem. The Vornax cubs just stole the humans' gloves, and she's chasing them through the observation deck, making noises we've never heard before. Ambassador Kael'thas's mandibles froze mid-gesture, antennae snapping vertical. The communication feed crackled with urgent static from Research Director Marcus Chen, whose voice carried the particular brand of controlled panic that only came from watching an extinction-level incident unfold in real time. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Repeat that, Kael'thas commanded, already moving toward the tactical display. The cubs have taken property, and the human is in pursuit? Affirmative, sir. The 3 specimens entered the observation deck approximately 4 minutes ago. They appear to have targeted her protective hand covering specifically. She's actually chasing them back, making vocalizations, low frequency, almost rhythmic. Our audio systems are struggling to... Are the cubs responding with aggression? Kael'thas cut in, his 3-fingered hand slamming the holographic interface. Immediately, 17 different camera feeds bloomed across the display, each showing a different corridor section of Xenobiological Research Station Gamma 7. Report on threat posture. Are they treating this as predatory engagement? That's the strange part, sir. They're playing. The human appears to be treating this entire situation as recreational activity. A sound that might have been choking escaped Kael'thas's breathing spiracles. Playing. She's playing with apex predators valued at 47 million credits each. Playing. Junior Officer Vexia, who had been monitoring stellar drift patterns from her station, suddenly stood up. Her iridescent skin flickered with concerned patterns, blue anxiety bleeding into worried purple. Ambassador, the peace treaty. If those cubs sustain even minor injury, the Thrax Collective will interpret it as deliberate hostage harm. That's our casus belli justification gone. I know what that is, Kael'thas snapped. He was already moving, his 6 legs carrying him toward the corridor with rapid, purposeful clicks. Connect me to the human, now. The feed opened, and suddenly they could hear it. A sound that made every alien in the command center's composite neurons fire in simultaneous confusion. It was almost a roar, but not quite. More of a rhythmic vocalization, repetitive and deep, with harmonic overtones that seemed deliberately modulated, like she was teaching something. Patricia, Kael'thas said, his translation matrix struggling with the casual tone that suddenly came through the speakers. You need to cease your current activity immediately and return the specimens to their containment enclosure. Yeah, hold on, There was a crash of something. Shelving, equipment, diplomatic leverage, falling. Got one. Ha! Okay, buddy, back to mama. These 2 are fast. Seriously, how do you guys keep them in those boxes? They're bored, out of their minds. Patricia, I need you to listen to me very carefully, Kael'thas said, forcing each word through his translation matrix with crystal precision. The Vornax cubs are dangerous. Yeah, I heard the briefing. Apex predators, extremely intelligent, cultural significance, blah, blah. Also, they're 3 years old. In human terms, that makes them toddlers. Grumpy toddlers, sure, but still toddlers. And, watch this. There was a moment of silence. Then Patricia's laughter filled the command center, genuine and delighted. They're lining up. Do you see this? They're actually lining up to do it again. That's learned behavior. They're training me. Vexia's skin shifted to deeper purple. Not just anxiety now. but something approaching philosophical shock. She's referring to the specimens training her? That doesn't fall within any established behavioral framework. She's going to kill them, whispered Xylar, the security chief, who had appeared in the doorway with the grim expression of someone watching their carefully constructed safety protocols evaporate. Or they're going to kill her. One or the other. There's no third option where a human and 3 Vornax cubs engage in coordinated recreational activity without catastrophic failure. But on the display, the footage told a different story entirely. The 3 cubs, each the size of a large feline, with scaled shoulders and predatory intelligence blazing in their forward-facing eyes, were indeed lining up. And Patricia, still wearing only one glove, the cubs had absconded with the other, was making that strange, rhythmic vocalization again. Then she did something that made Kael'thas's antennae droop in pure disbelief. She ran, not away, with them, matching their pace, matching their acceleration, making the exact same low-frequency sounds they were making. The cubs accelerated. She accelerated. The cubs began weaving left and right. She wove left and right, predicting their path with an accuracy that should have been statistically impossible for someone with less than 40 hours of exposure to the species. This isn't training, Kael'thas said slowly, his mandibles moving in the slow, deliberate pattern that indicated either profound realization or complete mental shutdown. This is something else. This is a problem, interrupted a new voice from the communication system. Patricia, slightly breathless now, but still amused. Your problem is that nobody ever taught these kids the difference between hunting and playing. They've got all that predator drive and nothing to do with it. They're not dangerous, Ambassador. They're just bored. Vexia leaned toward her console, her skin flickering with new patterns. Surprise mixed with something almost like recognition. Sir, what if she's right? What if we've been misinterpreting the entire behavioral profile? Kael'thas stared at the display, where Patricia Smith, a woman whose file indicated she had been a wildlife educator on Earth before volunteering for this diplomatic mission, was now sprinting through the observation deck with 3 Vornax cubs, all of them making sounds of what could only be interpreted as joy. Get me the Thrax collective contact frequency, Kael'thas said quietly. And someone better start taking notes on what's happening here. We're going to need them for the report. Which report, sir? Vexia asked carefully. The one explaining why our peace treaty appears to be improving through something we've never observed before, Kael'thas replied. I believe humans call it playtime. Security Chief Xylar's composite eyes, all 7 of them, tracked the live feeds simultaneously, each pupil dilating with mounting horror. The footage was impossible. It violated 14 separate behavioral models, 3 xenobiological treaties, and at least 2 laws of thermodynamics he could identify off the top of his primary consciousness. Patricia Smith was laughing. She was laughing while running at speeds that registered 47 kilometers per hour, matching juvenile Vornax sprint velocity exactly, while simultaneously producing vocalizations that made the audio recording systems spike into the red warning zone. Not human speech, not anything approaching human speech. These were deep, resonant sounds, almost subsonic, with frequency modulation that shifted between predator challenge tones and something that sounded disturbingly like encouragement. The cubs are accelerating, Vexia reported from her station, her skin cycling through increasingly agitated colors. Speed now 52 kilometers per hour. The human is maintaining pace. She's not just keeping up. she's predicting their directional changes. They're approaching the intersection with Corridor 7 Alpha, and she's already moving to cut them off, which means she anticipated. I see it, Zilar said quietly. His mandibles worked in the nervous pattern that indicated a security chief watching his entire threat assessment dissolve in real time. Running tactical analysis. Recommend immediate deployment of the tranquilizer barriers. Third-level containment protocol. Deploying now, confirmed a junior technician, fingers moving rapidly across holographic controls. The barriers activated with a soft hiss, transparent walls of biochemical mist designed to render the Vornax cubs drowsy enough for safe handling. Zilar had seen it work dozens of times. It was reliable. It was proven. It was... The cubs ran straight through it, not around it, not stopping. Simply continued at full velocity, eyes streaming slightly but otherwise completely unaffected. With Patricia deliberately inhaling deeply as she passed through the barrier, clearly choosing to breathe in the sedative. That's not possible, Vexia whispered. The Vornax have enhanced metabolic resistance, but the cubs are still developing their tolerance. They should be showing behavioral degradation within seconds. And the human shouldn't. A human lungs can't process that compound. It should incapacitate her immediately. Patricia's voice came through the communication system, amused and only slightly breathless. Oh, is that the sleepy stuff? Yeah, I've done this before. Worked with a Pride of Earth lions once. Keepers use the same general compound. You build tolerance pretty quick if you keep deliberately inhaling it. Your respiratory system adapts. Also, and I'm just guessing here, but I think your cubs might have the same genetic markers as most apex predators. Fast metabolic cycling, rapid adaptation to environmental stressors. Am I close? You've been studying them, Kylthas said through the communication system, his antennae twitching with something approaching hopeful panic. We can implement a proper research protocol. Step back, allow the medical team to... Studying them. Dude, I just got the briefing yesterday. I've been in the same room with them for about 40 minutes. Total. This isn't research. This is just how predators work. You guys are overthinking it. They're not aggressive. They're engaged. There's a difference. Zilar triggered the secondary protocol. Barrier reinforcement, doubling the wall density. The cubs hit it at full velocity and simply bounced off in a way that suggested they'd been expecting something to stop them. They turned, reformatted their approach vector, and accelerated again. Patricia, instead of running away from them, angled her trajectory to run past them, deliberately putting herself in their line of pursuit. She just reversed vector. Vexia's voice had taken on a quality of pure scientific awe. The cubs are now chasing her. That's predatory behavior. That's textbook apex predator engagement. That should result in physical contact, potentially injury, potentially play. Patricia's voice cut through again. She was moving faster now, genuinely pushing her human cardiovascular system to its limits. But her tone remained almost conversational. Your problem is, you're looking at everything like it's a threat assessment. You're thinking, predator, danger, containment required. But they're not attacking me. They're participating. That's learned behavior. I'm teaching them that chase is interactive, not terminal. The cubs were making sounds now. High-pitched chirping vocalizations that the translation matrix struggled to process. But Patricia matched them. Not perfectly, not with the same harmonic complexity, but close enough that the cubs responded by increasing their speed, their intensity, their engagement level. Sir, Zilar said carefully, the barrier reinforcement isn't functioning as a containment method. I recommend full facility lockdown and emergency extraction protocol. With what? Kyle Thas's voice came through the system, and Xylar could hear the sound of the ambassador reaching his own limit. Every containment measure we've deployed has failed. The cubs aren't panicking. They're not showing aggression markers. And the human is having the time of her life. Patricia finished, laughing. Okay, I'm getting tired now. Let's reset for round 2. Cubs, line up. Show me what you learned. And impossibly, the 3 Vornax cubs, apex predators with neural complexity matching that of dolphin analogs, creatures that had never in recorded history exhibited voluntary compliance with direct command from any non-thrax species, actually lined up. They lined up like she'd trained them for weeks. That's not trainable in 40 minutes, Vexia said flatly. That requires either extensive behavioral conditioning or what? Xylar asked, watching the footage, watching Patricia take a breath, watching the cubs visibly tense in preparation. Or they were already ready to learn from something, Vexia finished quietly. And we've been so focused on containing them that we never realized they were just waiting for someone to teach them. On the display, Patricia sprinted forward, the cubs exploding into motion behind her. And something fundamental about the station's threat assessment protocols began quietly, inexorably, to fail. Dr. Xylar stood motionless in the center of the command center, his 4 arms crossing and recrossing in patterns that indicated severe cognitive dissonance. He was Thrax Collective's foremost military strategist, the architect of every successful predator containment protocol for the past 37 years. He had published 17 peer-reviewed papers on apex predator psychology. He had spent 4 decades studying Vornax behavioral patterns. He was, by any reasonable measure, the single greatest expert on this subject in the known galaxy. And he was watching a human invalidate everything he'd ever learned. Run the analysis again, he said quietly. Frame-by-frame decomposition. I need to understand the biomechanical principles behind her directional prediction. The holographic display bloomed with motion capture data, Patricia's movement patterns overlaid with sophisticated predictive algorithms. Xylar's pupils contracted to pinpoints as he studied the data. Every movement she made was preceded by a micro-gesture from the cubs. Every directional change she anticipated by 0.3 seconds, too long to be random chance, too precise to be instinctive. Except it was instinctive. The data suggests she's not consciously processing their behavioral cues, the junior analyst said carefully. She's responding subconsciously to trigger patterns. That should require years of training, neural integration protocols, possibly even genetic optimization. She's doing it with 0 preparation. She's doing it because she's not fighting them, came a new voice through the command center speakers. Everyone stopped. Patricia's voice was breathless but entirely patient, as if explaining something obvious to a very young child. Okay, I'm going to try something. Everyone just watch. Don't talk, just watch. The live feed shifted. The cubs, having completed their 5th circuit of the observation deck, were visibly tiring. Their movements had become less frantic, more deliberate. Their vocalizations had dropped in frequency and intensity. Patricia slowed her pace accordingly, matching their fatigue exactly, never breaking the engagement, but making it progressively gentler. Then she did something that made Xylar's respiratory system halt mid-cycle. She sat down, right there, in the middle of the observation deck floor. She simply sat. The cubs, instead of attacking an immobilized target, which was textbook predator behavior, instead slowed, approached, and then began pressing against her legs. Not aggressively, companionably, You see? Patricia's voice was soft now, almost reverent. You just play with them. Show them you're not a threat. Build trust. It's not complicated. They're not aggressive. They're lonely. They're intelligent enough to want connection, and you've been keeping them isolated and terrified. That's the opposite of what they need. Kael'thas made a sound like something breaking inside his thorax. The cubs they're making contact with the human. Volitional contact. Not predatory, but affectionate. Vexia finished, her skin cycling through colors that indicated simultaneous shock and recognition. Ambassador, they're making contact comfort vocalizations. That's typically restricted to family units. Zilak said flatly. Mother-cub bonding sequences. The cubs are treating her as a maternal figure. Because she's the first entity that's ever treated them like something other than a security threat. Patricia continued, and now there was an edge to her voice. Not anger, but something colder. Disappointment. Look, I don't know your whole diplomatic situation here. I know you've got 3 cubs that were important enough to start a war over. But these 3, they're just babies. And babies. Human babies. Earth predator cubs, apparently Vornax cubs. They just want to know they're safe. They want play. They want interaction. They want to matter. The observation deck fell silent, except for the soft chittering sounds of the 3 cubs, now contentedly settled around Patricia's position. I've been doing this since I was 7 years old. Patricia continued, her hand moving gently over scaled shoulders. Started with my family's rescue dogs. Moved up to bigger animals. Worked a decade in wildlife rehabilitation on Earth before I even heard about the Thrax Collective. And the rule, the only actual rule, is always the same. Predators are only aggressive when they're scared or bored. Solve one of those problems, and you've solved 90% of your issues. Vexia leaned toward Kael'thas, her voice barely above a whisper. Sir, what if she's right? What if we've been interpreting the entire behavioral profile through a lens of threat containment, instead of just asking what they need? That's impossible, Zilak said, but his voice had lost its certainty. 40 years of research, peer review, methodology, flawed from the start. Kael'thas interrupted, and the ambassador's antennae were drooping in what could only be described as resignation. We designed our entire observation framework around the assumption that Vornax cubs are intrinsically dangerous. We never asked whether they might simply be young, developmentally immature, requiring the same socialization protocols as any juvenile predator. On the display, one of the cubs had fallen asleep, its head resting on Patricia's thigh. The other 2 were drowsing, their respiratory rates synchronized with hers in a pattern that suggested deep bonding. Dr. Zilak, Kael'thas said carefully, I'm going to need you to throw out your previous framework and start over. Because it appears that humanity has just revolutionized our entire understanding of predator psychology using nothing more than basic animal care and common sense. And a pair of stolen gloves, Zilar added quietly. And a pair of stolen gloves, Kael'thas agreed. Patricia's laughter echoed softly through the command center. Look, I know I'm probably missing some context here, but you guys have been treating them like prisoners, these little guys? Why would anyone... The communication cut off as Patricia drifted into lighter conversation, soothing the cubs toward deeper sleep. In the command center, a room full of the galaxy's most advanced military strategists and diplomatic specialists sat in complete silence, watching a human woman fundamentally dismantle centuries of doctrine with nothing but patience and intuition. Vexia's skin had settled into a steady blue, not the color of anxiety anymore, but of wonder. "So what do we do now?" she asked. Kael'thas looked at Zilax. Zilax looked at the display. The display showed 3 Vornax cubs sleeping peacefully around a human woman, their behavioral patterns completely normalized for the first time in recorded history. "We accept," Kael'thas said slowly, "that everything just changed." The formal diplomatic assessment took exactly 17 minutes to compile, which Kael'thas suspected was some kind of record for reversing 90 years of consolidated military doctrine. Dr. Zilax presented the findings with the careful precision of someone whose entire career foundation had just been liquefied. Human caretaking protocols appear to accelerate rather than inhibit bonding processes. He read, his antennae drooping with the weight of contradiction. Neural imaging suggests the cubs have achieved maternal figure attachment 14 times faster than standard protocol timelines would predict. Furthermore, the psychological markers indicate genuine contentment rather than chemical suppression or behavioral compliance. They are not docile, they are satisfied, which is functionally the same thing, Patricia said from the observation deck corner, where she'd settled for the night watch. The cubs were piled around her in an arrangement that would have triggered immediate containment protocols yesterday, but now felt almost inevitable. She was playing with the recovered gloves, using them to generate gentle movements that kept the cubs entertained without escalating their energy. Satisfied predators don't cause problems. Bored predators do. Kael'thas opened the formal proposal document with all the ceremony of someone about to reshape history. The Thrax collective leadership has authorized the following restructuring. Patricia Smith is hereby designated as Cultural Liaison and Predator Relations Specialist, effective immediately. Her purview includes all initial contact protocols with apex predator species and advisory consultation on diplomatic strategies with the Vornax Collective. There was a pause. Sure, Patricia said, not looking up from where one cub had decided her glove was now a possession to be defended. But they're just cubs. You overthink stuff. This is what animals need. Feed them, give them space to play, show them they're safe. It's not advanced strategy. It's basically what I did every day back home with rescue animals. Yes. Well, Kael'thas said carefully, what you consider basic animal husbandry appears to constitute advanced tactical psychology in our context. Dr. Zilax is currently submitting a paper titled Predator Behavioral Response to Human Engagement Patterns: Revolutionary Applications in Diplomatic Strategy. The Thrax Collective Science Ministry has requested exclusive rights to study your methodologies. They want to study me. Patricia laughed. That's hilarious. I'm literally just doing the thing my dad taught me when I was 7. I don't even know what I'm doing differently. But even as she said it, one of the cubs stirred, opened its eyes directly on Patricia, and made a soft churring sound that the translation matrix identified as contentment. The cub didn't look at Kael'thas, didn't look at Xylar or Vexia or any of the Thrax handlers standing nearby. Its primary reference point was Patricia. Secondary handlers, the diplomatic assessment would later note. Primary caregiver, human female. The trade negotiations are being restructured, Kael'thas continued, reading from the official decree. The Thrax Collective has agreed to extend favorable terms to the human diplomatic mission, contingent upon ongoing relationship maintenance with the Vornax cubs. The cubs' welfare and psychological contentment are now explicitly written into the treaty framework. Should the cubs' welfare be compromised, the treaty becomes null. So, basically, Vexia said, her skin flickering with something like amusement, We accidentally made a human the cornerstone of our entire diplomatic framework. We went from seeing humans as liability to this. What we saw as liability, Patricia corrected, gently, sitting up slightly as the largest cub shifted to rest its scaled head on her shoulder, was just me doing my job differently than you do yours. Where I'm from, if you treat something like it's dangerous, it stays dangerous. If you treat it like it's just a kid who needs boundaries and play, different story. Kael'thas felt something shift in his conceptual framework. We've built 90 years of doctrine on the opposite assumption. Yeah, and look where that got you, Patricia said. But she wasn't unkind about it. 3 cubs that were supposed to be part of a peace treaty, locked up and terrified. That's not strategy. That's the opposite of strategy. The door to the observation deck opened, and a delegation of Thrax handlers entered, led by the cubs' original caretakers. They stopped at the sight of the 3 juveniles, sprawled contentedly around the human, showing none of the aggressive tension that had previously characterized their containment. They've never been this calm, one of the handlers said quietly. We tried everything: specialized feeding protocols, environmental enrichment, pharmaceutical interventions. Nothing worked. Because you were trying to suppress them instead of engage them, Patricia said. Now she gestured the handlers closer. Here, come sit. They don't bite during play session, come down. They're just tired. Let them remember you're also safe. It was a casual instruction, delivered with absolute confidence. The handlers obeyed, because what else could they do? The evidence of Patricia's competence was literally asleep against her shoulder. Formal documentation is being filed, Kael'thas announced, his antennae finally returning to something approaching their normal position. The following papers will be circulated to all collective scientific bodies. Ancient Earth Wisdom, Applications in Modern Predator Psychology, Human Intuition as Diplomatic Asset, and Paradigm Shift in Apex Predator Care, a Revolutionary Framework. Your stories from Earth are being cataloged as foundational research. Patricia made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a cough. You're treating my dad's animal rescue handbook like it's a scientific paper. It appears to be, Zilax said, rejoining the group with the careful steps of someone rebuilding his entire professional identity. The principles you describe are, upon analysis, functionally revolutionary. We have been overcomplicating predator psychology. You have simplified it to its essential components. Or maybe you just forgot what simple looks like, Patricia offered. And she reached down to gently scratch behind one cub's ear. A gesture so casually affectionate that it seemed to summarize everything that needed to be said about the fundamental difference between humans and Thrax collective strategy. The cubs made soft sounds of contentment. The treaty held, and somewhere in the Thrax collective leadership hierarchy, someone was beginning the process of rewriting every first contact protocol in existence to include the phrase, consult with human liaisons regarding predatory engagement patterns. Patricia's quarters were approximately 2.3 meters by 3.1 meters, adequate for a single human occupant, completely inadequate for someone who apparently now maintained permanent residence in an observation deck. She stood in the small kitchenette area, making coffee in the ancient earth brewing apparatus she'd insisted on bringing to the station, and tried to mentally reorganize the next 12 hours. Night shift with the cubs, briefing with Kael'thas about the Kelran delegation. Apparently there were forms to fill out to make her position official. Forms. As if what happened in the observation deck could be documented in a bureaucratic framework. Her comm system chimed. Patricia, this is Vexia. The junior officer's voice carried an unusual quality. something approaching confidence that hadn't been there before. I wanted to inform you that my promotion has been approved. I'll be heading the new Human-Alien Relations Research Division. I'm recommending that we establish protocols for consulting human specialists on all first contact scenarios. That's great, Vexia, Patricia said genuinely. You deserve it. You were the first one to actually question what you were seeing, instead of just accepting it. I was the first one willing to admit we might be wrong, Vexia corrected. We were so focused on what could go wrong, we never considered what could go right. I've spent 3 years training in threat assessment. Nobody taught us to look for cooperation, for relationship building. That's going to change now. The call ended, and Patricia was left standing with her coffee, processing the fact that mentioning this obvious truth to someone had apparently triggered a career reassessment for the entire Thrax military. She was halfway through a sip when another signal came through, this one from the observation deck. The Cubs' behavioral monitors indicated elevated activity levels. They were awake. They were looking for her. Yeah, I'll take the night shift, Patricia said to the empty quarters. Someone should. They're still babies. She gathered the recovered gloves, made a mental note to ask about proper toys for Vornak's cubs. Surely the station had something better than recycled diplomatic equipment, and headed back toward the observation deck. The corridors of Xenobiological Research Station Gamma 7 felt different somehow. She passed by a status board that was being updated in real time and caught fragments of text. Restructuring predator containment protocols, human-derived methodologies, integration of trust-based approaches. In one of the side offices, she caught glimpses of Zillax and another strategist, a Kelran maybe, pointing at diagrams. The Kelran was making sounds that the translation matrix interpreted as skepticism. Zillax was showing video footage of the Cubs. Kelran's tone shifted. She smiled to herself. She knew what was about to happen. The Kelran would ask to consult with a human. Zillax would apparently have to explain that humans had suddenly become essential to diplomatic strategy. The cosmic irony would never stop being funny. In the High Command Center, Kael'thas was reviewing the preliminary findings from what was now being called the Observation Deck Initiative. The diplomatic implications were staggering. If apex predators responded to human behavioral patterns this dramatically, what about other species? The Kelran delegation had specifically requested human consultation. The Vornak's collective had sent a preliminary message asking if the human could be retained for ongoing relationship maintenance with their cubs. Humans, a species they'd viewed as diplomatic wildcards, potential liability factors, unpredictable variables in carefully controlled scenarios. Humans whose main qualification appeared to be the ability to understand that beings, even dangerous ones, just wanted to be treated with basic respect. Request approved, Kael'thas transmitted to Patricia's communicator. Prepare for your meeting with the Kelran delegation. And Patricia? Thank you. I know this probably seems less complicated than it actually is to you. But from our perspective, you've rewritten everything. In the observation deck, Patricia was settling in with the Cubs, who immediately surrounding her with soft, chirping sounds of recognition. One of them had already claimed the right glove as a favorite toy. The other two were jostling for position near her shoulders. She pulled up the briefing notes for the Kelran meeting while absently scratching ears and observing predatory juvenile dynamics. The document was dense, filled with formal language about revolutionary protocols and paradigm integration. She read through it once, shook her head, and switched to something simpler, checking the feeding schedules, reviewing the Cubs' behavioral charts, making notes about what enrichment activities might be helpful. This is how complicated alien diplomacy is, she muttered to the cubs, who were now genuinely settling into sleep mode around her. You make it sound so difficult. It's not, it's just paying attention. The cubs made soft sounds of agreement, or maybe just contentment. The translation matrix wasn't sure which. In the High Command Center, researchers were filing reports with titles that made Kael'thas's antennae twitch. Human intuition as diplomatic tool. Relationship-based engagement in apex-predator contexts. Revolutionary framework. Trust over containment. None of them had consulted with Patricia about any of it. She was too busy making sure the 3 sleeping cubs had enough space to dream, reviewing tomorrow's protocols, and wondering if anyone had considered installing a proper sleeping area in the observation deck. The Vornax Collective's preliminary message had included a note about long-term care expectations. Long-term. As if she was going to let anyone else handle this now. The gloves lay on the floor nearby, slightly mauled by juvenile predators, quietly representing the moment when the entire diplomatic framework of an interstellar alliance had shifted on its axis. And Patricia Smith, formerly a wildlife educator from Earth, now apparently the galaxy's most essential diplomatic asset, simply settled in for the night watch and made coffee. Nobody had asked her permission to revolutionize everything. But then again, revolution, like good animal care, rarely waited for formal approval. It just happened when someone finally paid attention to what was actually needed.